Welcome back. Now, Iran has set a date to execute a Swedish-Iranian national later this month. Ahmadreza Djalali was sentenced to death on charges of spying for Israel in what's been denounced as a grossly unfair trial. Human rights groups say the sentence is retaliation for the war crimes trial of the former Iranian official Hamid Nouri by a court in Sweden. To talk more about that, we're joined now by Meir Javedanfar, Iran lecturer at Reichman University in Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for being with us, Meir. So can you tell us a bit more about the case of Ahmadreza Djalali?
Well, he's a scientist who was basically kidnapped, and the Iranian regime wants to use him to release Nouri in Sweden. And now the Iranian regime is feeling very nervous because Nouri, who has been prosecuted in Sweden for gross violations of human rights and numerous executions in Iran, has been sentenced, and the whole sentence has been broadcast in Persian. People in Iran have been watching and hearing about the ugly crimes of the Islamic Republic, especially during the first decade after the revolution. And this has got Iranian officials worried because, look, they're worried that if the international community is going to do this to Nouri, then they could do it in the future to Iranian officials, other Iranian officials. So to create kind of a deterrence, they have condemned Ahmadreza Djalali to death.
So you would say that Jalali's conviction is inextricably linked to the case of Hamid Nouri?
It looks like it, yes. It's a complete trumped-up charges. This is an innocent dual Iranian who was, I think, invited to a conference in Iran. This is a very, very sad and tragic story. He has a young family in Sweden. This is very unjust what they're about to do to him, and it goes to show how much the Iranian regime fears about its other officials being made to stand to answer for their crimes. And it's very worried by the precedent that was set, especially by Sweden, on Nouri.
Can you give us a bit of background about Hamid Nouri then? Who is he? What is he accused of? And how did he end up on trial in Sweden?
Hamid Nouri was involved in the trial, in the execution of. After the revolution, the Iranian regime had an alliance with the Mujahideen Khalq movement. Mujahideen Khalq movement believes in Islamic political ideology and Marxist economic ideology. So because it believes in political economic ideology and it was anti-imperialist, it joined forces with Ayatollah Khomeini. But then soon after the revolution, they realized that Khomeini broke the pact. So the Mujahideen Khalq, there was almost a civil war in Iran. They were expelled from Iran. They ran off to France. Then the Iranian regime started blowing up targets in France. So the French kicked them out, and the Mujahideen Khalq went to Iraq. And they fought alongside Saddam Hussein, something which was terrible. But, the Iranian regime, in retaliation for some of the battlefield victories of the Mujahideen Khalq against the Iranian forces, killed somewhere between 3,000. I mean, there are numbers that say there's as much as 30,000. I think that's too much, but at least 3,000 Mujahideen Khalq people who had nothing to do with the attacks from Iraq. The regime took them out of prison and executed them. And Hamid Nouri was one of the people who was involved in these kangaroo courts and the mass executions of these young people. And he was actually lured into Sweden by an Iranian woman, I believe. And as soon as he came to Sweden, he was stopped by the Swedish and they made him stand for his crimes. He's being on trial and is being condemned.